Welcome back, friends, to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be explaining a huge accounting change that is happening right now, GASB 87, and I'm going to be explaining why this is so important. In the United States, we have two main accounting standards, GASB and GAAP. GASB is the accounting standards for government organizations, and GAAP is the accounting standards for business. The business world is constantly changing, and so every year new accounting standards are released that update how we do accounting. Now, if you are watching this and you work in private business, you might be thinking, why do I care about a GASB pronouncement? I only care about GAAP. You might want to stick around and watch this video, because what ends up happening is the accounting standards boards will roll something out in GASB first to test it out before they roll it out in GAAP. So even if you work in private business, you should be paying attention to what is happening with GASB 87, because it may be coming for you next. The new standard is called GASB 87, and it is about leases. This is one of the biggest accounting changes we have seen for a very long time. Without getting into the details, leases were previously expensed on the income statement, and now they are recorded as long-term liabilities on the balance sheet. Basically, it has taken what was previously off-balance sheet transactions and putting them on to the balance sheet. This is an enormous amount of work. For many organizations, they have hundreds of lease documents. Each one needs to be reviewed, analyzed, and booked in the accounting records. For most accounting departments, who barely have enough staff to put together the annual financial report, this is an incredibly difficult task. So you must ask yourself, why are we putting ourselves through so much pain to make a drastic change? To understand the reason behind GASB 87, you must understand one of the central concepts in business. Everything in business revolves around bond markets. Once you understand this concept, everything in business makes so much more sense. Bond markets are the foundation of the investment world. Everything is built on top of bond markets. Bonds are the most stable, least risky, most boring investment out there. For that reason, it forms the basis for most large portfolios. It provides a safe place you can put your money and get back a very predictable amount of interest income. On top of the bond market, you have all of these other types of investments like stocks, options, derivatives, currencies, commodities, all of which are more risky, more exotic, more interesting, but also less reliable. Large organizations spend a lot of time paying attention to bond markets and their credit rating. The credit rating determines their access to capital markets. A great business provides a way to use capital to fund a business model that will make money for everyone, including the investors. In the government world, government bonds are big business. The government uses bonds to build schools, roads, and utilities around your city. This allows the government to fund very large projects and pay off the interest over time with tax dollars. This brings us back to GASB 87. And you must think, what is GASB 87 doing? It is affecting your liquidity and solvency ratios, which is assets compared to liabilities. Liquidity is captured with the current ratio, which equals current assets divided by current liabilities. This tells you if you can make your immediate debt payments. Solvency looks at the long term. Solvency is captured with the debt to equity ratio, which equals total debt divided by total equity. This tells you if the amount of leverage being used by an organization is sustainable in the long term. If you are a bond investor, liquidity and solvency are the most important ratios. It's generally preferable to loan money to people who have less liabilities. For example, Imagine you are lending money, and you have a choice between two different people. Both people have the same amount of assets, but one person has very little debt, while the other person has an enormous amount of debt. All things being equal, you would rather loan your money to the person with very little debt, because there is less risk of them not paying you back. For the person with a lot of loans, you must worry if they're going to be able to make their debt payments. When we talk about leases, there are some organizations with a lot of buildings. These are brick and mortar buildings that they are paying long-term agreements for. Previously, these agreements were not included on the balance sheet. That makes it very hard to compare with an organization that may not have many leases. So just imagine two organizations, one with a lot of buildings and one with no buildings. Previously, both organizations' balance sheets would look the same because leases were not on the balance sheet. But that is not a true reflection of what is going on. One organization has a lot of debt. We are entering a new era in business where you do not necessarily need to use a lot of buildings to operate your business. You can have an entirely online organization. You want to be able to be compared against other organizations on an equal footing so you can show how effectively investors' capital is being put to work. Even though GASB 87 is difficult, it is very important. For something that is usually a huge expense for many organizations, leases are something that significantly impact liquidity and solvency ratios. It makes financial statements more accurate and easier for bond investors to use. Anything that makes capital markets more efficient is a good thing. Now I want to hear from you. Now, I know GASB 87 doesn't affect everybody right now, but if it does affect you, go ahead and let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Zach from Wolves in Finance. Let's go out and make some money.